People were shocked but not surprised about the death of Alexei Anatolyevich Navalny, who was a Russian opposition leader, lawyer, anti-corruption activist, and political prisoner, because dissidents in Russia always met their demise either by pushing through windows, or poisoning or assassination in the form of plane crash, or whatever option is available, to eliminate the dissent. Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia, has faced significant international criticism, and has been described as a pariah by some due to a variety of actions taken by Russia, under his leadership, that conflict with the interests and values of other nations, especially Western countries. Here are several reasons why he has been labeled as such. Vladimir Putin's involvement in Moldova and invasion of Georgia. Both situations involve complex geopolitical issues. In Moldova, there's the disputed territory of Transnistria, and in Georgia, there's the conflict over South Ossetia and Abkhazia. These conflicts have a long history, and the geopolitical dynamics are intricate. But Putin's action was a dictatorial and tyrannical behavior. Annexation of Crimea. In 2014, Russia annexed Crimea from Ukraine, an action that was widely condemned by the international community as a violation of international law. This led to a series of sanctions against Russia by the United States, European Union, and other countries. Conflict in eastern Ukraine. Russian support for separatists in eastern Ukraine, where fighting has occurred since 2014, has further strained relations with the West. Russia's role in the conflict has been viewed as destabilizing and has prompted additional sanctions. Allegations of election interference. Vladimir Putin's government has been accused of interfering in the electoral processes of other countries, most notably during the 2016 United States presidential election. Such actions have led to allegations of undermining democratic institutions. Military intervention in Syria. Russia's military intervention in the Syrian civil war to support President Bashar al-Assad has been controversial. The Russian military has been accused of carrying out airstrikes that have resulted in civilian casualties, which has drawn international condemnation. Use of Novichok and polonium. Russia has been blamed for the use of chemical agents in the poisoning of former Russian intelligence officer Sergei Skripal and his daughter in the UK in 2018 with Novichok nerve agent, and the 2006 poisoning of former FSB officer Alexander Litvinenko with radioactive polonium-210 in London, and the poisoning in the ultimate death of Alexei Anatolyevich Navalny. 2022 invasion of Ukraine. The full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February 2022 has significantly exacerbated Putin's status as a pariah in the eyes of many countries. The invasion has resulted in widespread destruction, civilian deaths, and the displacement of millions of Ukrainians. In response, numerous countries have imposed severe economic sanctions on Russia and have offered various forms of support to Ukraine. These actions, among others, have led to strained diplomatic relations and various degrees of political and economic isolation for Russia under Putin's leadership. Russia/Putin is a pariah because of the geopolitical and diplomatic stance, responses, policies, and actions on the international stage. Putin's involvement on Malaysia Airlines flight MH17, which was a passenger flight from Amsterdam to Kuala Lumpur that was shot down on July 17, 2014, over eastern Ukraine, an area controlled by pro-Russian separatists. All 298 passengers and crew on board were killed. International investigations, led by the Dutch Safety Board, DSB, and the Joint Investigation Team, JIT, concluded that the aircraft was shot down by a Buk surface-to-air missile that was launched from an area controlled by pro-Russian forces. The JIT concluded that the missile launcher belonged to the 53rd Anti-Aircraft Missile Brigade, a unit of the Russian Federation military. Russia and its president, Vladimir Putin, have faced significant criticism and allegations of involvement due to these findings, with many in the international community holding them responsible either directly or indirectly, due to their support for the separatists and their involvement in the conflict in eastern Ukraine. However, the official reports have not directly accused President Putin of ordering the shooting down of MH17. The Russian government has consistently denied any involvement in the incident and has disputed the findings of the JIT. Following the investigation, charges were brought against several individuals, and in 2021, a Dutch court began the trial in absentia of 4 suspects, 3 with ties to the Russian military and intelligence, and 1 Ukrainian separatist leader, all accused of playing key roles in the downing of the aircraft. The incident has further contributed to strained relations between Russia and the West, leading to sanctions and contributing to the characterization of Russia under Putin as a pariah state by some international actors. Muammar Gaddafi was a lot better than Vladimir Putin, the former leader of Libya, provided various social programs aimed at providing education, housing, and financial support to the Libyan people during his time in power. Under his rule, Libya had certain social welfare measures that were notable in the context of the country's oil wealth and comparatively small population. Education and healthcare were heavily subsidized by the state, and there were programs intended to support housing. Gaddafi's government also undertook efforts to distribute the nation's oil income among its citizens through various subsidies and salary distributions. However, his regime was also widely criticized for human rights abuses and authoritarian rule. Muammar Gaddafi's regime in Libya was implicated in various acts of international terrorism, including aircraft hijackings and bombings during the 1970s and 1980s. A notorious incident linked to Gaddafi was the 1988 bombing of Pan Am Flight 103 over Lockerbie, Scotland. This attack resulted in the deaths of 270 people, including 11 on the ground, making it the deadliest terrorist attack on British soil. In 2001, a Libyan intelligence officer was convicted for involvement in the bombing, and Gaddafi's government eventually accepted responsibility for the act, agreeing to pay compensation to the victims' families, although Gaddafi himself never admitted to personally ordering the attack. Libya was also implicated in the 1986 hijacking of Pan Am Flight 73 in Karachi, Pakistan, which led to the deaths of 20 passengers and crew. Although direct evidence of Gaddafi's involvement in this particular incident was not as clear as for the Lockerbie bombing, his regime had been known to support various militant groups and militant responsible for hijackings and similar terrorist actions. These and other incidents led to Libya being designated as a state sponsor of terrorism under Gaddafi's leadership, and they significantly isolated the country from the international community for many years. Gaddafi's regime was also known for its authoritarian nature, with reports of human rights abuses and repression of dissent just like Putin. Dictators engage in the suppression or elimination of rivals and dissidents for several key reasons, primarily to consolidate and maintain power. Here are some motivations behind such actions. Eliminating threats. Rivals and dissidents can pose a direct challenge to a dictator's authority, offering alternative visions for governance or criticizing the dictator's policies. Eliminating these individuals reduces immediate threats to their power. Maintaining authority. Dictators often rule through a combination of fear and control. By harshly dealing with any opposition, a dictator sends a message to the populace that dissent will not be tolerated, thereby deterring others from speaking out or acting against the regime. Control of military and security forces. Dictators often ensure loyalty among military and security forces by purging individuals who are disloyal or have divided allegiances, thereby securing the means of state control and coercion. Uniting power base. Dictators may also deal with rivals within their own party or power structure, to ensure that there are no divisions or challenges to their leadership from within. Creating a culture of compliance. Through the extreme measure of killing opponents, dictators aim to create an environment where the public and the regime's institutions are compliant and adhere strictly to the policies and wishes of the dictator, often out of fear of facing similar repercussions. Eliminating alternative power centers. In many cases, dictators will target influential figures in society, such as business leaders, intellectuals, or religious figures, who have the potential to become focal points for opposition movements. Securing legacy. Some dictators are motivated by a desire to shape their country's future, according to their own vision, eliminating those who they believe threaten their desired legacy. Personal paranoia. In some cases, dictators may become increasingly paranoid over time, perceiving threats where they might not exist, leading to purges of perceived enemies, both real and imagined. These actions, while aimed at maintaining control, often contribute to domestic instability and lead to international isolation, as they conflict with principles of human rights and the rule of law. Dictatorial regimes are frequently characterized by such human rights abuses, and they may face sanctions and other forms of pressure from the international community as a result. The regimes of dictators throughout history have ended in a variety of ways, often in accordance with the tumultuous and unpredictable nature of authoritarian rule. Here are some of the ways in which the reigns of several prominent dictators have concluded: violent overthrow. Muammar Gaddafi, Libya, was overthrown and killed during the Libyan civil war in 2011, which was catalyzed by the Arab Spring movements and later supported by NATO intervention. Nicolae Ceausescu, Romania. Captured during the Romanian Revolution of 1989, quickly tried, and executed alongside his wife. Natural death. Francisco Franco, Spain, died in 1975 after a prolonged illness, leading to a transition to democracy following his designation of a monarch as his successor. Joseph Stalin, Soviet Union, died of a cerebral hemorrhage in 1953, but his cult of personality and political structure took time to dismantle. Forced resignation or ouster. Augusto Pinochet, Chile, stepped down following a national referendum in 1988 and the election of a new president in 1989, but remained as commander-in-chief of the army until 1998. Hosni Mubarak, Egypt, resigned in 2011 after widespread protests during the Arab Spring, and was later tried and convicted on various charges. Political reforms and peaceful transition. Mikhail Gorbachev, Soviet Union, although not a dictator in the traditional sense, his policies of glasnost and perestroika led to political liberalization, and eventually the dissolution of the Soviet Union in 1991, leading to his resignation. Assassination. Benito Mussolini, Italy, captured and executed by Italian partisans near the end of World War II in 1945. Anwar Sadat, Egypt, assassinated in 1981 by members of a radical Islamist military faction opposed to his policies. International prosecution or exile. Slobodan Milosevic, Yugoslavia, was arrested, charged with crimes against humanity, and died during his trial at the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia. Idi Amin, Uganda, overthrown and ultimately lived in exile in Saudi Arabia until his death in 2003. Coup d'etat. Fulgencio Batista, Cuba, fled Cuba as Fidel Castro's forces took control during the Cuban Revolution in 1959. Salvador Allende, Chile, died during the 1973 military coup led by Augusto Pinochet. Popular uprising. Ferdinand Marcos, Philippines, was ousted during the 1986 People Power Revolution and fled into exile in Hawaii, where he lived until his death. The fates of dictators are often tied to the intricate dynamics of the internal power structures within their countries, external influences or interventions, and the degree of force they have used to maintain their regimes. Their downfalls are typically violent or abrupt due to the repressive nature of their governments, as transitions to democracy or a change in the political order often occur when the foundations of the regime become unsustainable.